Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today, as this season is, he's actually ex-law enforcement and military, so it's going to be some pretty special stuff. His name is Darren Burch. He was law enforcement in Phoenix for 29 years with Phoenix PD and then a year with the sheriff, so we'll call it 30 years as we just talked about before, semantics. But before we get into really hearing about Darren and Darren's story and his tools and what he does and his ideas on burnout and us kind of going through it all, I want you to make sure that you are just turning your hearing ears on, or if you're sitting down listening to this, grab a pen and paste paper and just note down just one thing from this that you get, because we don't want to go overwhelming. There's going to be a lot of good stuff today, but as I always say, just take one thing, because we want to train that mind to fight hard as we always do in law enforcement, so that when we get tested, it's easy. It's my motto: train hard, test easy. So just get that pen and piece of paper, find one thing that sits with you. I'm sure you'll find more than that, but at the end, we'll talk about making sure that you just grab that one and run with it. So Darren, tell us a little bit about yourself, your policing career, what you're doing now, and experiences with burnout. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely, brother. I tell you, my journey is unlike a lot of others. A lot of cops, when they start out, they had always dreamed of being a cop. They watched Adam 12. I'm dating myself immensely there with the 60s reference. But, LA Law, whatever, they always want to be a cop. And that wasn't me. I mean, I really didn't do well in school. Was short, pale, and average, and I didn't excel at anything except wrestling, because I was my body size. I was like Adam Ant. In the police world, 5'9", 5'10", if I'm stretching on my tippies, that's it, and so the world was always a lot bigger than I was. But I had I guess you wouldn't call it a big heart. And when I was 17, I went to a party with a bunch of guys, buddies of mine, and luckily we were smart enough to have a designated driver because we were typical youth. We were drinking at this desert party with bands and kegs. There was like 30 kegs, so who's not going to get drunk there, right? And so my buddy's driving. Thank God he was sober. We're driving along and this is way in the desert. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, as you mentioned. So this is just desert. We're driving back from, because a big old fight started out. Bunch of guys and not enough girls, so there's always going to be a fight.
Yeah, always.
So we're driving back, and some older couple was in front of us. You could tell by their bouffant hairstyle and old Cadillac that was just creeping along this old highway, but it's more of a road than it was it was just a 2-lane highway is what it was.
Yeah.
And as we're driving along, we're just patient, just waiting behind it. And somebody came behind us, impatient, try to pass on the right side of the roadway into the gravel. And they almost made it, sadly, but they didn't. And they veered off, ended up going to a wooden pole that had a power unit on it, transformer. Transformer blew up. Any kind of lights that were out there went off, but the light show from the transformer lit up the sky for a while. Before our car even came to a stop, before my buddy could even pull off the road, I was literally jumping out the window. It's just something in me, and I think it's in all cops. It's in our DNA. We it's not like, wow, we're so brave running to the gunfire. It's just in our DNA. I don't call it a bravery thing. I really don't. It's just who we are. And so I was literally I felt trapped. I felt like I was in a prison in this car. I had to get out, try to save these people. So I literally jumped out the window of this moving car. And it probably wasn't going that fast anyways at that time. He was trying to slow down and get off the road. And then ran to the car. And not knowing now what knowing then what I know now kind of thing. Seeing accidents and collisions and so forth, many times the damaged area is the easiest side to open on a vehicle. Yeah. And in this case it was that way. And indeed, where the car had wrapped around the pole, I went for the undamaged side, you would think. And of course the way it spread out in the metal, it was just tight as a drum. Could not open it, get in, but I could see there was someone in the driver's side and was wrapped around from the passenger side. So I tried to run over to the front of the car and fell over something. I didn't know what it was. And I looked down, And there she was, a young lady that was ejected out of the windshield. And this was in the, like I said, the 70s. This was actually in the 70s, like 78, I guess. And she was just something out of a bad B horror film. She was
Yeah.
split wide open from the top of her head down to her chin, wide open, just wide open. And my hands were in her bloody flesh. And the reason I mentioned the year because that during that time frame, windshields of cars, didn't have that shatter effect. They went in shards, large shards, and so she was literally went through a meat grinder, being thrown out the window, and I froze. I literally froze. I can't tell you how long it was. I have no recollection of time, whether it was a second, whether it was a nanosecond. It wasn't too long because I still was able to get up, get to my feet, run to the other side before my buddies showed up. So it was probably seconds, but I don't know how many. And it comes, man. I'll explain why. Get to the other side, and my buddies joined me. At that time, I was able to get the passenger to open a little bit, but again, it was up almost up against that power pole that it creamed against. I was able to open up, and me being the smallest guy, I've kind of alluded to that anyways. My nickname in high school was Boo. So, Boo Boo Bear. Yeah. So anyways, there was no vote taken or anything. It was like, duh, Boo's going to go in there and get the people out. So between the four of us, there's me and my three buddies. We were able to get since there was no passenger, front seat passenger was that young lady who went through the windshield and she was dead. I was able to get to the driver. We got him out. The four of us carried him to our car. He looked fine. I mean, he was unconscious, unresponsive, but there didn't look to be any kind of trauma, any kind of life-threatening situation, which sadly or not sadly is the case in a lot of drunk driving people behind the wheel. And he was no exception to that scenario. The next person we went to get was the backseat passenger, also a male. He was speaking a foreign language. I don't know if that was his native tongue or he was just doing gibberish, but we pulled him out. He definitely had some trauma. He was hurting. I couldn't tell where the blood was coming from, but he was hurting. Could have been from the shards of glass, that was all around the place. It was at that time, pulling him out, that I realized the car was on fire. It wasn't like the movies, where there's this huge fireball explosion with, and then everyone's able to run away from the fireball, in the nick of time. It wasn't that at all. Yeah, right. Hollywood. They make our job so difficult.
Oh, they do that. They make our job look so amazing, actually.
How many shootouts where people are pointing guns at each other do you see in movies? Yeah. Anyways, I digress. So at that point, I realized there's not just an accident regarding their welfare, but there's an accident regarding our welfare as well. So we get him to the car. By the time we get back for the last occupant, which is a girl, I can still see her. That's in my memory, and I'm able to squeeze in. But it's a daunting task to say the least. Wow. I'm able to squeeze in, but it's through wreckage seats, through the glass, and now the fire. And so my body keeps I'm reacting to the fire, and I really didn't want to, but my body kept reacting to this fire, and against my mental capacity to fight it, it just kept flinching. But I'm able to get to her finally, and as I get to her, the thought of saving her life just consumed me. I literally can tell you what I was thinking in that moment. What I was thinking was, her mom and dad are going to be so happy. They're going to just love me. And again, these things, and when you go through these traumatic things, how time slows down, and you can have these very vivid thoughts that are very detailed and in a nanosecond. And so I'm having these thoughts about how happy they're going to be that their princess is alive, and I was brought up with a single mother, so I was really thinking of mom at the time, how happy she would be that I was able to get her baby home. And as I pulled on her, she wouldn't budge, and she was completely unresponsive. And as I'm pulling on her, I realized that it's the old-fashioned lap seat belt that I didn't see because of the debris and everything. It was like, it looked like a war zone inside this car. And so I'm trying to get to it. And I finally get to it without too much difficulty. And I'm pressing the little button on the lap seatbelt. There's no other mechanism to be found, and it will not release. The clasp is broken. It's jammed, and I don't understand why. It wasn't the fire. It wasn't like it was consumed in fire at that point, but it wouldn't open. So now I'm trying to pull her out of it. Well, the seatbelt did what it was supposed to do. It made her stay there, and I could not get her out. By the time the fire, I got some minor burns, really, but still there today, have them. My buddies, next thing I know is my buddies are pulling my shoes, pulling me out of the car, and they without a doubt saved my life, because the car went up. So I sat out there, and even today, this was, oh my God, 40 years ago. And I'm being generous. I was crying. I was just kneeling and bawling, watching her burn to death. It was just, the mind, as we talked about this, isn't capable of processing that trauma and that pain and that anguish, undeniable, infinite anguish. And so as I'm watching, I'm just crying, and time kind of escapes me. I don't remember how we finally left. At some point, the fire department came, and the county, again, this is 70s in Phoenix, and not even Phoenix. This is probably, Maricopa County or some type of, might have been Yavapai County, but it was just, desert area. And it was really a ridiculous set of affairs, how we were treated. No one asked us, our witness statements. No one asked our names. I had burns on my arms. No one treated them. They just didn't want any information on us. And again, we were, full candor here, transparency, as it were. I was definitely intoxicated, so it's probably, they're probably looking at me as just another drunk kid, So anyways, the reason I bring that up is it wasn't that I thought, hey, I can be a cop, but I survived that moment. I mean, I melted down, no pun intended, on the side of the car afterwards, but, I was in the fight, if you will. And, so it kind of told me something about myself. Even as a dumb 17-year-old kid, I kind of reflect a lot upon not just the horrors of what occurred. It's like a buddy of mine, Jason Sexually, always talks about, it's 10% what happens to you, 90% how you deal with it. Yeah. And it was so true, because I that 10% was horrible, but the 90%, if I take away, is, I did not save a young girl's life that day. And that still bothers me. It does. But we saved 2 lives that day. Yeah. And so you have to take the win, whatever it is. So kind of flash forward, I get married. She's not the best person in the world, bless her heart. She had some mental health issues, but she was pretty. And I was, 17, 18. And, joined the Army. As dumb as I was in high school, I could, I guess, excel in tests. I don't know if it was some form of cheating. I don't know, but I was able to get into military intelligence. I ended up learning Russian and sign language and a bunch of other things, to include Morse code, both sending and receiving. Yeah. And had a nice career as a sergeant, but I was a single father. She took off. She didn't like being married and didn't like being a mother. So I became a single father, which is an unheard of animal in the Army. Nobody was running after me.
It's not very, I mean, nowadays it's a little bit more common, but back then it wouldn't have been very common in general.
No, exactly. This was in 84 by this time. So fast forward a little bit through into my 4-year Army career. And so, I had nobody wanting to re-enlist me. I had no re-enlistment sergeants running down my door trying to get me a re-enlist. So I got out. I ended up as military intelligence. The only job I saw was as the CIA, and there was something I could do that was relatable. It was military intelligence, like I said, but it's electronic warfare, signals intelligence, emitter, locator, identifier. And it's a lot of words for how I would find bad guys sending Morse code. Again, We're talking the 80s.
Wow. Yeah. The
So
80s. Yeah, that would have been fun times back then.
yeah. At that time, Russia was our enemy. Oh yeah, they are
Oh
still.
wait, it's come back again. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure back then we were kind of living how we are a little bit now.
Exactly. Everything comes back around. So, anyways, you gotta laugh, right? Otherwise, you'll cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I became a single father, got out, and went back home because that's what you do. You find some nest to find, and to lick your wounds, and end up raising my son by myself, and for a few short years, and found the love of my life, and became a cop because there was a jail that just opened up, and they needed guards, and I said, God, I can do that. And it was working at Madison Street Jail, a brand new facility. And they had put in the worst of the worst. Because you think about this, think about a jail opening up, and all the other jails get to put their prisoners to you. They're not going to give you their best people. They're not going to give your best inmates. They give you the worst of the worst.
Always get rid of the worst. It's what we used to do in the police. We used to take them and drop them in the other districts so they weren't our problem anymore.
Oh, I got a great story about that in one of my books. Oh my God, I can't wait to get that. But anyway, so we were being literally shit on. And I mean that, literally shit on. They would throw shit at us, throw piss at us. It was these shit balls they would create with, anyways, it was happening every night because we were in Phoenix, and the air conditioner went out because it was a new facility. So now we got homicide suspects in a medium security facility. And so we got these homicide, I say suspects, they're waiting, so that's why they're defendants, but they're hardcore. Someone went from prison to jail, you know what I mean? So they're lifers and so forth. But anyways, that's when I realized something very profound, really. I hate bad guys. I hate bad guys so much. Oh my God. So I decided, I'd much rather put them here than babysit them. So I applied for the job and I got it. And my first year, I found myself realizing something about that day in the fire with that young lady who burned to death. I was obsessed with saving lives. I was literally obsessed, and not in a good way, a good and bad way. I would be going way too fast through situations. Most good cops love that proactive nature. They love to find stuff. They'll stop the car with a white light, or the brake light out, just see if they can find something, and good for them. That's what we need, especially now where we've lost a lot of proactive policing because of, the summer
because the policing's been changed, especially in the U.S.
Oh yeah. And it's going to take us a decade to get back to good policing. There's no doubt about it. If we do, but again, I digress. But I was the type that I just loved chasing the radio, because the radio was literally someone calling for help. And so I would get 20 to 30 radio calls a night, which is insane. It's a 10-hour shift, granted, but insane. I would hold all my paper to the end of shift where I would do the paperwork on my own time. I was an idiot, but I was obsessed with saving lives. And I was, fortunate. I did a lot of that. I was very fortunate, and had a really good career in patrol. And then I went on not one call too many, but one that really put a lot of things in focus for me. It was a bank robbery. I was into my shift. At this time, I finally got off graveyards. I had enough seniority to get on days, decent days off, that kind of thing. I had a family. I was remarried, had a little girl, so now there's the four of us. So it's like, I need to be a little bit safer. So I went to days, and it was a bizarre bank robber who was his and not my nickname for him, but the media or the detectives, robbery detectives, I guess, nicknamed the Hollywood Bandit, because he had this flair for Hollywood ridiculousness. For example, the one I showed up on, which just happened to be at the right place, the right time kind of thing. He had showed up in a 3-piece suit, riding a pink girl's bicycle, with a grenade and a revolver. And at that time, when the call came out, I didn't know what it was, but it was a 357 8-inch. and it looked like a cannon when it was aimed at me,
Yeah.
I tell you. But so anyways, we get there, and because of the girl's bicycle scenario, and this guy was smart, I have to admit, he was smart. And I say was, I am using past tense. When he rode in there on the bicycle, he used that as his ruse as a decoy. So when he was done with the job, he basically went in. It was the takedown kind of robbery at the bank where he's screaming, yelling. He puts the grenade down. He's going from teller to teller. He's screaming at them, the whole 9 yards, and by himself. And then when he's got his money, he pulls a pin in a very Hollywood manner, lets the spoon fly, and then throws the grenade into the middle of the bank. And of course, everyone's screaming and running. Panic, mayhem ensues. Well, it was a military grade grenade canister of a smoke canister. So, not that anyone would know that, but as the smoke is going,
it's like the difference between a BB gun and a real gun. You don't actually know the difference until you actually hold on to it.
I wonder, maybe a BB. So anyways, they ran out, rightfully so, and he went out with the mix. He had a large duffel bag which had his new set of clothes. So he got out the 3-piece suit. He went into whatever he was going to wear. I'll tell you in a second. And then he hands off the bicycle to a transient. So as this transient is riding with his free little girl's bicycle, which is a reason to make a stop anyways, the gauntlet of police cars were after him, and I could see the perimeter of the bank. Just what the hell? I mean, there was no cops anywhere now, right? So I thought, I'm going to leapfrog. I'm going to go to the other side of the bank in case this guy is doing what I think he's doing, which he did. So as I'm leapfrogging, I catch him. He catches me. Deer in a headlight scenario. I get out. I tactically park so that my vehicle is between us, if you will, and I'm doing the commands. And his gun is straight down, but the gunfight's on. And luckily I won and he lost.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I shed a tear for that POS. I really did. At the time when I had to go back to the crime scene, because it's a crime scene, it's a homicide. It's up to the investigators to decide whether or not it's a justifiable homicide or a murder homicide. And so when I go back to crime scene, I don't know he's died. I had no idea. And I'm talking to the lieutenant, a great lady that was in charge of homicide. And as she's kind of explained to me, there's going to be a process where you're going to walk through with the internal affairs. And there's a process you're going to walk through with my detectives. At that time, we had two separate. And she's going through this whole rigmarole. All I'm thinking is he alive? I kept telling myself that. And finally, because this is a lot, I mean, I knew it was a lot to do. It's a police shooting, but, and he wasn't. And it wasn't bawling or anything, but I could not stop a tear coming down. Could not. And I'll be honest, it doesn't bother me today. I don't lose sleep over it. I lose sleep over the young lady who burned to death before my eyes, but I don't lose sleep over him. I was fortunate to meet his parents. They're beautiful human beings who talked about what happened in his life. I found out that he had drug. I found out that from some of the detectives, so I was just a patrol officer with 10 years on at that point. I say just because, man, after 30 years, you're still learning.
Yeah.
And you really are, man, every day.
Yeah, every day you learn. And if you're not, you're kidding yourself.
So that kind of told me I needed to get maybe out of patrol. Maybe, my 9 lives maybe have expired. Because, I've been shot at 3 times. I've been stabbed. I've been in the mix a little bit, doing some rough areas of Phoenix. And at night and so forth. But anyway, so I went to detective, started out burglary, went to, assaults, and I just love sex crimes. I ended up doing a little bit of homicide, but I ended up going back to sex crimes. I just loved sex crimes. You could help people. But when I was in homicide, so I ended up being promoted, became a sergeant with 20 years on. I thought, 10 years of patrol, 10 years as detective. My last 10 years of my 30, I'll do as a sergeant. I'll get a squad, kind of teach them what I think is important, kind of give back kind of thing. And I ended up getting shanghaied to homicide. They wanted me to go up there. I was what's called night detective, and we talked about this a little bit before the
Yeah,
show.
we did before. Yeah,
We were, it's called the B squad. If you're using a basketball metaphor, I was the bench sergeant, and we would come out at night, and we just go from suicide to suicide to suicide. I mean, it was not uncommon to take 6 suicides during the Christmas holiday season at all. Uncommon at all. A night. And I had detective, I had 3 squad members. So
and here you are, somebody who wants to save lives, and all you're doing is doing people taking their lives.
Thank you. I don't know if I even thought about that until right now when you mentioned that, but that was.
Here's the person who joined the police to save lives, and in the end, all you're doing is scraping up people that haven't.
And I talked to you about this before the show too. I probably had 100 notifications, or advices, however people want to the vernacular, depending on what.
For those that aren't aware of it, that aren't law enforcement, it's the job where you go and tell loved ones that somebody's passed away. It is it's the heart. I hand on heart believe the same thing. There is no worse job I have vivid memories that will never leave me of watching women, sisters, brothers, husbands, fathers.
It stays with you.
Drop to their knees right in front of you, or not be. Yeah, it doesn't leave. The death, I actually find, leaves me. There's a few of them that I kind of still remember, but it's the advising jobs they're ingrained in my brain.
Yeah, you go in cop mode, and that's I know every cop listening will understand what I'm saying. You just kind of desensitize yourself to in order.
Well, you have to. You remove that emotion, and it's what I talk to lots of people about, and I coach people on, even current ex and pre-police. It's that removing the emotion so that you don't get so emotionally attached, but you do anyways. So it's kind of a moot point anyways. But what it does is it gets you to be able to deal with the situation right then and there. But the key is to actually reattach that emotion, and so many cops lose that.
A good sergeant of mine one time explained it. It says you have 2 hats. You have your cop hat and you have your civilian hat. And your civilian hat is what you put on when you need to cry, you need to be sad, you need to hug the wife, kick the dog, whatever you need to do. You do that. But so during this time period it's funny, I never even thought about how that was like literally the worst job of my career. And yet I had a good camaraderie with what I call the death squad, with these 3 detectives, and I took cases as well. You had to. There's no way we could have. It's a team effort, but not nearly as many as they did. Not even close. But I would try out do all the notifications because I thought that's what a good sergeant do. The chevrons of a sergeant is to keep the shit off your troops. So it's like an umbrella.
It's good leadership. It's good leadership. Do your best to keep the shit off the troops.
Yeah, because they're the ones that get the job done. So about a year into it, I'm off duty. Again, it's night. So, and I want to say, I'm pretty sure it was my first day off. I'm pretty sure it was, not possible. Looking back, I wrote in a book, but looking back, I think it was my first day off. And the phone rings, and it's like, I don't want to freaking answer this phone. It's well before cell phones. This was in 97.
So you had a wireless telephone in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. It was December 20th, 1997.
Oh, wow.
At approximately 7:45 a.m. And the phone rings, and I answer it, and it's my wife. And I was like, oh, good. I'm glad I answered it. I just, love you, bye-bye, sort of thing. I'm not really listening or hearing. And she's kind of, I can tell there's a tone in her voice. Something's wrong. And she's saying that a friend of DJ's can't wake him up or something to that effect. And my son at this point, that little boy who I left the Army for, is now 24. And so I'm listening, and I can hear some urgency in her voice, but I'm not really buying it, if you will. I'm tired, but without second hesitation, I find myself dressed in my car driving to his house. And he lived alone, fairly recent.
So this is your son?
This is my son, yeah. And he moved out when he was like 2021. I helped him get his own business. He was putting in Arcadia doors. His name is Darren, like me, he was the junior, so we called him DJ. We were just best friends. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you hear that and that's a cliche, but we really were. His girlfriend used to get mad at him because he'd want to come over Thursday or Friday nights, hang out and watch The Sopranos with me. And she goes, "That's sick. That's sick, Darren." Everyone else called him Darren.
Yeah.
What? I love my dad.
Yeah.
And we had
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. It's,
Are you? Okay.
yeah, I'm the same way. I'm very close with my dad as well.
Now, do you have the same voice as your dad?
Very similar. I do have people that are like mine. I have a little bit more of a Kiwi-ish. I've picked up a little bit more of the New Zealand kind of thing. But my dad and I are very close. We paraglide a lot now, and because my dad used to paraglide in Northern California a lot, brought it there, and so we do a lot together. So I can relate to that. We do
and we're really buddies. You know, like you get it. But what was kind of cute is since we had literally identical voice, identical. When the phone would ring, he'd get tired of talking to someone. He'd hand me the phone. I would just continue the conversation. And then when they said something really inappropriate, I said, "Oh, hold on, let me get my son." And so we had the biggest kick doing that. So anyways, that's kind of like our relationship. So I'm driving a bat out of hell because I don't know the full. I'm telling myself all the things. You know, he's had one too many. He's sleeping it off. The friend just is overreacting. He's calling the mom. You know, that sort of thing. And again, my wife, which, you know, she raised him when he was 4, you know.
Yeah.
So, but when I get there, I see the fire truck. And now I'm still going through this process. And it's probably about a 20-minute drive. And I get there maybe in 9-8 minutes. So when I get there, so I'm telling myself everything's fine, but I'm just not reacting that way at all. I'm reacting like this isn't good. And so when I get there, I see the fire truck, and now I'm doing the same calculations in my head. I'm analyzing the way it's parked, how there's no lights and sirens on. That's a good thing. Is, you know, it's not in the middle of the road, taking up the entire road, where it's, you know, exigency. And, you know, I'm weighing all these things like, okay, but I still
You're going cop on it.
Yeah. So I'm sprinting in the house, and I sprint in, and there is, and I'll try to keep my composure. There is a group of firemen surrounding his bed, and he's lying in the bed, and he's clearly dead. And it was a medical emergency that was undiagnosed, and my world shattered in that minute. And I, you know, all the training I've had in my life, I jump on that bed and I'm hugging him, and just cannot wrap my head around my favorite person in the world isn't with me. And so I'm hugging him, and bless the fire department. God bless their hearts. They just let me have that moment. And a cop comes in at that point, because I even beat the cops there. And a cop comes in and starts to kind of grab me or something. And firemen literally took him to the side. Now, that cop had every right to do that. You know, this could be a crime scene. He doesn't know, you know, so I have no ill will against this cop, but I could see any other parent would, you know. And at one point I finally get off him, and I'm just going to the living room. I'm literally, I kid you not, I'm in a fetal position. I'm just crying, uncontrollably. And, you know, for all I know, that is obviously the infinite pain for a parent. But then you add all the years of, you know, at this point, I got 20 years on the apartment, all the years of those notifications, all the years of, you know, a few unfortunate, you know, SIDS.
Squishing emotions away continuously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wasn't your typical cop where everything was cop world. You know, I had a life. I love movies. Behind me, it's not books. I'm not smart. These are all movies. You know, so that was what I refer to as PTSD. You know, that was the disorder that I went through because of what life hands you. Sometimes life gives you shit. And that was my PTS. I think a lot of cops have PTSI, which is the injury based on the job. This was, and it could be both, you know, if I'm going to be technical about it, you know, it could be both, a combination, but I lost it. I just took, you know, your bereavement leave. Here, at least in the United States, we get 3 days. And I always kind of joke about same thing there.
Yeah.
I joke to people, would you want to be on an airplane and the last thing that the pilot says when he talked about, how long the trip will take, and, we'll be going over the Grand Canyon. So it'll be a beautiful scenery off to your left. And also, by the way, I lost my son 3 days ago. You have a nice flight. That's the last thing you want to hear, right? Yes. So my bereavement leave went into vacation time. I took vacation for another, I guess, 2 weeks. And I can't tell you what my plan was. I had no plan. I was just existing. I was in a fog. Talk about the fog of war, the fog of trauma. And I was just existing, really was. Thank God I had a wife I absolutely adored at that point, now 20 some odd years. My daughter, she was, 15. So I had a lot to live for. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd be here today. I hate to leave it on a down note like that, but I don't know if I would be, quite honest with you. So I end up going back to work, homicide. Night detectives.
Oh, this is going to go bad.
Yeah. How can it not go bad? Right. And I was saved. And so I was literally saved. I would come home every night, spinning and crying. Luckily I would be coming home at 4 a.m., on a good day, right? On a good night, 4 a.m. Most, you get tied up. There's some times where I work double shifts because it's just insane. So anyways, long story short, I got a phone call from a dear lieutenant who heard about what happened to me. And you would think the last place I'd want to go to was child crimes, but he couldn't imagine me doing what I was doing. And I had worked for him a couple of times. I worked with him once in patrol, worked with him once in sex crimes. And so he liked my mindset in terms of training and helping and facilitating the squad. And we were having some problems, quite frankly.
That saving lives mentality.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. And so, I said, sure. So I applied for the job, and anytime the lieutenant over the detail wants you, it's pretty going to get the job.
Yeah.
You're probably going to get it, unless you, sabotage it somehow. But I got the job and I loved it. And I don't know if this speaks to what you're talking about before about finding your inner self and what can save you.
Yeah, that why.
I always looked at it as the why. I always looked at it as avoidance. And I won't lie, there was avoidance there. I wasn't that 2.5 weeks that I spent, in my bathrobe, sitting on the couch, it wasn't me dealing with my grief. The year going from, 6 days, 10-hour shifts, working, dead bodies, wasn't dealing with the grief. I didn't do counseling. I was just, sucking it up the best I could.
Like most cops, like most cops do, especially back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if we didn't know better, but maybe so.
Yeah.
But having said,
I think it's gotten a little bit better, but it's I think it's a little bit more accepted now than it was back then.
To do.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to do. Too many suicides shows us there's still a lot to do. Once the suicides come down, then we know maybe we're starting to get in the right ballpark. But anyways, so I end up transferring from my love for helping children to a thing, and I'm sure you have it there. It's worldwide. It's called Crime Stoppers International. Not that I have a face for TV. In fact, my predecessor is tall, dark, and handsome. I'm, like I said, short, pale, and average. So I kind of said we wanted to go in a different direction. So we went with me, short, pale, and average. I would talk to folks, try to solve crimes, did a radio gig. And on the beginning of the radio gig, now I'm going to jump up again. This is around 2009, 2008. I didn't trust the internet. And they wanted me to do a weekly gig where I'd come on, talk about the crime of the week and how, and for those who don't know what Crime Stoppers is, it's a tip management system where police solicit tips to the community. They get an anonymous tip back. They then create a package, give it to the right detective, and we solve the crime. And then the person who gave the tip gets a reward. Beautiful program. It's almost like a perfect community-based policing program. It's community really helping you solve crimes. And any money is all donated and goes back to that community. That person gave a tip. So it's a beautiful program. Truly loved it. But when I was doing this program, I didn't trust the internet. They wanted me to do a stupid suspect story. Like before each of my weekly manhunt updates, they wanted me to do a stupid suspect. So I didn't have stupid suspect stories, but I had a hell of a lot of dumb Darren dilemmas. I had a lot of situations where I found myself in a stupid situation, going way too fast for my feet to follow. And so I would tell these stories. I called it Twisted But True. And actually I called it Twisted but True Tales. And that's what we called it each week. And at one point, probably about 3 years into this, I was driving my daughter. Now she's like 18. We're driving somewhere at night, and I'm listening to that happen by happenstance, listening to that radio station, be the same rock and roll morning show, if you will. But that night I'm listening to it, and they're doing a commercial for the next morning, which happened to be my gig. And they said, join us tomorrow morning for Sergeant Darren Burch's Twisted but True Tales, and then Gene Simmons with Kiss. And I thought, oh my God, I beat Gene Simmons on Kiss. That's when, wow, it got to my head. My head swelled. It wouldn't even fit in the screen. I felt so cool. So life was good, I thought. So now I retire, a 30-year career. I'm doing good. Somebody suggested I write a book to help, because we were so successful with our crime management. I say we, it was definitely a team. All I'm doing is the face and the voice, and I changed some parameters, turn it into more of an investigative friendly. So we're really geared towards the detectives, not so much, handing out lollipops. That we had a 50% increase in our arrests. So because of that, I felt really guilty leaving, because we almost broke the bank. We almost broke the bank when we left the squad, because when I retired, like two of my guys wanted to retire at the same time. So we left. And I thought, I'll write this book. It'll be just a silly little paperback, coffee table kind of book. I had no idea what I was going to do. Me writing a book, I always joke the hardest thing was the crayon to print transfer process for me. But I wrote it. I gave it to a couple of friends. They kind of handed it back. Said, yeah, it's good, which is code for it really sucks. And so I rewrote it. That book that should be nothing to write took like 3 years to write. I finally finished it. My wife kept saying, do you love it? I kept saying, it's good enough. She goes, no, love it. And so I finally loved it. Put out on Amazon. It became an Amazon bestseller. Just overnight, just did really well. I got on, there's a show on ID channel called American Detectives with Joe Kinda. He's the guru. Talk about homicide. Talk about a god in the homicide era. Who the hell has a 98% clearance rate? Nobody can do that. No. Yeah. And so, he has this show called Homicide Hunter. So anyways, they had me for the season finale because a couple of the cases I had worked was in the second book, because the first book did so well. The publisher wanted me to do a second book. So I did. There's a third book that transformed into a podcast I'm doing with a beautiful human being that's 1,000 times smarter and more humane than I'll ever be. Jason Schechterly. He was burnt from the top of his head down to his navel in a Crown Victoria in 2001. Wow. Yeah, and he survived. And if there's a story that's inspiring, it's his. He's the one that talks about 10% of what happens to you, 90% of how you deal with it. It is. But in writing this book, kind of bring it all together, I finally sat down and just breathed my heart out. And the book is funny. That's what's so funny about this. The book is 90% funny. It just ends on, it begins on the accident I had told your audience about with the crash. I kind of started there, and then it ends when I had to go to court on a serial killing deal. And I won't go into that because it's in the book, but I won't go into what day it was, but it's the worst day that I could actually testify in court. And so it's sad that the chapter ends on a sad note, and it does talk about my son. So the second book was really written just so that I could say, I'm sorry about the way it ended the first book. It was so depressing. Please don't kill yourself. Please read the second book. Go back to funny. And so I wrote the second book, and the publisher said, you got to do 3 because then we can do something with it with Hollywood. It's like, oh my God, I'm not a writer, but so I wrote this third book. And so if I had advice to give through my 30 years of hell, it's chronicle, because that allows you to vent, and venting will find the heart of who you are. Yeah. And that's what I did. I did write, my, little anecdotally, if you will. And when I was in that gig with the rock and roll morning show where I would do these things, I knew how radio was. It's succinct. It's especially back then. A podcast hell, we can talk. We can take.
Yeah, we can talk whatever we want.
Right. Yeah. It's awesome. It's two guys talking. It's
Yeah.
two brothers talking. And but with AM FM radio, which was what I had at the time, you know, it was very succinct. It was very watch your language. So I literally wrote an outline. So all these stories were already had the outline. So I was solid.
So writing the book was pretty easy.
Let
me ask you this.
There's
there's a couple things that I wanted to just real quickly kind of jump over.
Yeah.
Obviously, you went through all these different things. You've lost your son. You've managed to write a book and that. If you were to talk to a cop who is starting his career right now, from all the learnings that you've gone through, you know, the things that you've seen, you've dealt with, what would be the number one thing you would tell them at Police Academy?
You know, the one advice someone gave me, and then I'm going to go off that and say something else, but one of the best advice somebody, my training officer, great guy, Cliff Jewell, who was one of the lead investigators in something here that was pretty famous, the serial shooter case of Dale Hausner and Sam Dietman. But anyways, I digress. He said there's 3 rules in police work. You probably know these 3 rules. You know, the first rule is you go home. The second rule, your partner goes home. And third rule, as long as you can accomplish those rules, try to catch the bad guy. It's good advice, but it's hard to listen to as a young guy who wants to save lives, or like my buddy meat eaters, you know, which you might have been, you know, these meat eaters that just love catching bad guys, and you know, they're just great at
the chase.
Yeah, they love the chase. And I won't lie, I like that too. I won't lie. The wrestler in me came out in those days, you know. So you know, I was that little animal. Anytime buddies would show and there's a fight, I would pick the guy up so I could throw him down because I couldn't fight him. I had no reach. He was going to
use those wrestling techniques.
I did. I always took out the knees, brother. I always took out the knees. So anyways, that's great advice. And you're going to hear that advice, and it's solid advice. But I would prepare you for 2 things. I would prepare you, the new recruit, understand you're going to see the worst day of your life on this job, and you'll see the best day of your life on this job, barring, you know, the birth of your child. You're going to see, or the death of your child. You're going to see just the entire spectrum of humanity, from the monster to the, you know, Monsignor. You know, you're going to see it all. And so prepare yourself for that. And you can't. So because you know you can't, chronicle it, write it. Write your dark days, write your happy days, write both days so you can reflect upon it, because it does give you an outlet. If you don't have that perfect wife, you don't have the perfect parents, you don't have the perfect husband, perfect significant other, you know, write it so that you can at least discharge it from you, even a little bit. You know, we always talk about, there are people that use different metaphors. I really love to hear what metaphor you use for your shit bank, that you keep taking in all this stuff. I always use the metaphor of, and again, I'm dating myself, 60s, maybe in 50s now, the tea kettle. The tea kettle is on the stove. It's filled with water. It's been boiling. Now the whistle's blowing. And if you just leave that and you stop that plug from whistling, it's not venting, it's going to explode. Other people use it as a trash can, and you keep putting the toxic waste in a trash can. Eventually it overflows, but you got to do something to let it out. And granted, it may just be venting, which is what I did when I took the job as child crime. So I was venting that steam, and I would still have my moments. It wasn't until I wrote the book that I sat down literally for, you know, a long enduring time period and just wailed like a banshee and dealt with it. And by that time, another thing is, when you're dealing with your hell, whatever that hell is, people can recognize it. You know, you got to listen to your loved ones. You got to understand you're seeing things that you may not seeing, or you're suppressing.
I love it. You know, my thing is, I actually have mine's flipped upside down. You know, so many people talk about, you know, you've got to you know, empty that cup. So you can, my thing is actually you got to fill the cup. So my analogy is a cup with a hole in it, and I'm trying to pour things into it. And because I'm in all that trauma is sucking all that water out of that cup so fast that I can't even fill it back up. And
I like that.
And so my thing is, you know, yeah, you can keep pouring shit into that cup, but if you never plug that hole, it's all just going to keep pouring out, and that hole just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more and more trauma and that we deal with and we see, and we never actually deal with the
deal with.
the whole of all
Yeah,
of your emotions and your self getting drained out of it. Doesn't matter what you pour into it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so that's
yeah.
all. It's all about looking after yourself. You know, you look
Using
after
your
yourself first.
metaphor, using your metaphor, my book would have been that plugging the hole,
Yeah,
and the job in child crimes was feeding my soul. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Doing something, it was still avoidance, but I was feeding
You were
myself.
filling the cup with it. You were filling the cup with it. It was
Yeah,
still pouring
yeah.
out, but
I
you
didn't
know, and
go dry.
that hole got a little bit smaller because by doing stuff for yourself, it can help plug the hole because you do start to talk about stuff. You start to focus on different things. You
Yeah,
start to see different stuff. So the hole does start to get smaller. I mean,
I love that.
that hole will never ever be completely plugged up. There will be
Yeah,
times where it'll kind of open and close, and it's kind of like those valves, those one-way valves. You know, the more pressure you put on it, the more it opens up. So the more pressure you
yeah,
put on yourself, the more it opens up. So if you put less pressure on yourself, it closes down, and it becomes a trickle. Sometimes there's nothing going out of it. So that tank is completely full. The goal is not to continuously fill the cup. The goal is to help plug that hole so that cup can stay full.
you got to
And
fix the problem.
yeah, fix the
Recognize the problem.
problem before you try and before you try and do anything else. Because if you never fix the problem, then all you're doing is putting a band-aid on an arterial wound.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Good luck with
know?
that.
Yeah. Good luck with that. If you've ever been anywhere near an arterial wound, a band-aid does
Yeah,
not fix that.
yeah.
um,
Gotcha.
yeah, and, and it is like you said. It's so important to have those outlets. You know, I think of outlets. I love that yours is journaling. At times when we're in a real dark place, when we've had some things happen, I literally had to sit down at my computer. My mom reminds me of it. She goes, "Chris, vent it out." She used to tell me when I was a kid, and I think back to it all the time. She used to tell me as a kid, she's like, "Chris, if you have a problem with somebody, write them an email, but don't send it
Don't
for
send it.
3 days." She's like, "Don't
Mom,
send it for three
mom,
days.
perfect advice.
Read through it every single day, and if at the end of those 3 days you still
Where was
need
your
to."
mom when I needed her?
I
Where was your
know
mom when I needed
exactly,
her?
and and she goes at the end of those 3 days, if you've edited it and tweaked it and changed it, and you go, "No, this needs to be sent," then send it because you've
Yeah,
sat on it and it's not from an emotional place anymore.
yeah.
And
There's a
so
filter.
there's a filter. You've actually gone through it and you've gone, "No, wait a second, this does need to." If you're still running from emotion, give yourself another 3 days.
Right,
you
right.
know, and so it is, but this comes down to the why thing that we talked about before we started recording, and I'd love to hear what you believe yours is. And I believe wholeheartedly, and from the research that I've done and from the working with people, it actually stems back to, and there's a seed planted before we're even 6 or 7, from some sort of incident or something that's happened. Mine is I create less pain for myself and others so that we create the best version of ourselves. So that's my statement, and I help people create that so that then we can change the language around how they focus on things, how they do things, what they do can then serve that, not what they do as their identity. I'm going through at the moment working with some people to possibly get in and talk with some law enforcement because we all leave law enforcement and we're like, well, who am I now?
Yeah, it defines you. And
Who am I?
like this.
Because my identity has been a cop, especially after
Yes.
30 odd years. So
That's
that's
funny.
my
Still refer to him as lieutenant.
yeah, exactly. And people still call you, and I still get it now. They're like, "Oh, Chris was a cop, or Chris will know he was a cop," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, I was, but that's not who I am anymore. Like, that's not who I am. I help create less pain. And if I look at my policing career, that's what I did in the beginning. And just like you wanted to save lives. Just in the very beginning, that's what I did. Is I helped people reduce pain in their lives and those around them. And so I'd sit there at domestics and I'd talk to the offenders and that and give them tips and tools and, in a way, coach them like I do now to help them so that we don't have to come back to this house, because if I create less pain for you, it's going to create less pain for me because I don't have to come back here.
Yeah.
And then in turn, it's going to flow. But that all stems from my dad going to chiropractic school when I was 5.
Okay.
Because he left and I was very close to him. And we were like best friends
He's
even
helping
back then.
people.
And if I go a little bit earlier, even, it's a little bit around kind of maybe the feelings and stuff around my parents' marriage and that in the beginning. But the incident that comes to my mind every time I go back into it is that my dad leaving to go to chiropractic school, and he'd be gone all week, come home on the weekends, and then be gone all week and come home on the weekends. And so my thing was, I'm going to create as little pain for other people as I can because I'm in pain and I don't want to be.
And almost a metaphor of his existence because he's mending people.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. And my mom was a chiropractor, so she was very busy and doing her stuff. So she wasn't necessarily always around. I was being, looked after by family and my brother as well, in those years. But yeah, so that's my why, and I believe that if we have that, again, it comes down to that, as we talked about the metaphor of the thing. It helps close that hole, because now I'm living from me, not living from everybody else, trying to please everybody else, trying to please people by, through, then that's all that whole is pleasing
Yeah.
people and doing everything for everyone else. So what would you say, Darren, what do you believe your why possibly is from back there, and, you've seen?
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. And I refer to as your DNA.
Yeah.
And again, cops have this certain DNA, but above that, we as human beings have certain DNA that comes out in us.
Mm.
And as a kid, I was just very jovial, very happy, but I had this desire to help people. Kind of like not so much as mend in terms of you fixing, but in terms of just being there. If there was that Norman Rockwell picture of a kid trying to help some old lady across the street, the Boy Scout effect, if you will, that was me. All my neighbors, I could not do enough. I'd mow lawns for free. Who does that? I'd mow lawns for them. I would shag golf balls out the backyards. We lived kind of a little remote, about maybe a mile from the freeway, so you can see it's fast. And then there's this freeway way out there. So I'd be shagging these golf balls for one of my neighbors who loved, doing the driving range out in his back alleyway. So I had that in me to really help people. And it's not why I became a cop, which is funny because you think it would be. I just always had that in me. And to me, it was second nature to want to help people. And then you add the horrors of what I saw and failing. Granted, the intellectual side of myself knows that we saved 2 people that day, but the poor me, pity party, Darren, looks at, I failed and a girl died. So you add that kid who is, his inner heart is always wanting to help people and truly help them, truly help them. And as
So Darren, why is that important? Yes. Because most cops I talk to say they want to help people.
Yeah.
Why is it important for you to help people, though?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I really can't. There was no defining that I can recall. There's no.
But not even so much the defining moment, but why is it important for you to help people?
It feeds my soul. It's selfish. It's selfish. I get such a rush helping people. It's literally feeds my soul. I'm happy. I'm joyful. And the more I'm helping people, the more joy I get. It's like for people that may not understand that, and I think probably a lot of people do, hopefully, it's like giving a Christmas present. I much rather see people opening my present than opening a present. Yeah. And that gift of giving, I think that a lot of us have that altruism, and it's not defined by altruism as much as it is defined by selfishness. It feeds our soul. It does. So yeah, that's the only thing I can say in terms of that why. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like I can see it because I always coach people a lot on this. I can see it. That the why and the deep level of it. It's just that articulating exactly the thing. And so we default. What I find a lot of cops, they kind of know it subconsciously. Yeah. They kind of do. You really do. But the actual statement around it, we default to I help people. And when we dig deep down, like mine started initially, I want to help people. I want to. I saw a train crash in L.A. It was a freight train, a cargo train, and a passenger train collide together, and I was in L.A.
Oh my gosh!
I didn't see it actually happen, but I saw it. We were driving past, saw the smoke, and then on our way back home, saw that's what had happened, and that. So I watched the breaking news for hours. And watched all these cops down there. And my thing initially was I want to be down there helping those people. I want to be with those firefighters and those police officers. And the police officers are doing the biggest thing. But then actually when I dug down deeper into it, it got me a long ways. And but I did a lot of this through my years.
You know what? as we're talking, I know maybe I need to pay you some therapy money and fees, and also I want to talk to your parents about Crick. I have my back, but I can't help but think I was really close to my mom. She was a single mother. She had me and my brother, and my brother died at the same time my son died. It was a bad year for me, and um, I just recall vividly her crying and not making it in this world as a single mother with a very menial job. We were, less than middle class. Yeah, so I wonder if the pain of seeing her, because
How old were
yeah,
you? How old would you have been?
oh, when I first recall her crying, 3, 4.
Yeah. So it'll
Yeah,
have
I don't
something to
have a
do with
lot of.
that, and then it's going to be the
Yeah,
statement around that. And the reason I say this is because we default to that. I want to help people because it's easy. We hear it all the time, and that. But when we really dig down into the levels of it, and we go, "Oh wow, this is where it comes from," which is just as important. But this is actually the statement of what I do. Like I know one person, one of the clients that I coach is he wants to live life finite, so as if it's his last day always.
yeah,
Another person of mine was that they were dependable. So dependability. So it's
right. They can always be
how are they
dependent.
dependable to others, and how do they help others become dependable? And so there's multiple different, and it's your language and that. But when you identify it, then all of a sudden you don't burn out anymore because you're serving that serving
Yeah, yeah,
instead of
an
serving an
endless
external.
void, right?
Yeah,
That can't be
yeah,
filled.
yeah.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah, it makes
this
sense.
can actually plug the hole because it's like, hey, well, this is why I'm doing this.
Right, right.
And
Good
it
or
serves
bad,
me.
I
It's
can
it's
fix it.
serving
Yeah,
me every
yeah,
single moment, every single day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Love it,
yeah,
love it,
nah, it's
brother.
awesome. What would be your what would you say your top tip to self happiness is, Darren?
Oh gosh, you know, sound like a broken record. Um, no, I was gonna say the whole get back into the, leave the day better than you found it kind of thing
Yeah,
makes me happy. And like if I put up one smile on somebody's face, and I don't care if it's open the doors. I was that again, the little, Boy Scout, or maybe a brownie because I was too small to be a Boy Scout. But it's it's understanding that you always are in a transformation mode. You're always reinventing yourself. Businesses have to, even Sears and Roebuck, the biggest company in the world, went under because they couldn't reinvent themselves with the Netflix generation. You always have to be reinventing yourself. You just always be adapting to the situation. Like again, if we give it to a cop metaphor, when you go to that family fight and you're telling yourself the worst case scenarios, you're working different things out, what you would do if, understand there's always that if that you don't know, and being able to adapt to the challenge and understanding all the variables that are coming at you, and analyzing them. And so when you look at your life, post career, whatever that career is, but we'll talk about police in a second. Realize that you've done this for, 20 some odd years, or 15, 10, doesn't matter, whatever your career is with that, is that career. And as in law enforcement, and you get out, it's not a light switch. You don't turn it off. You're still that same person with the same desire to help, and same need to be wanted and have value. And so you have to, I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed. As sad as my situation is, as happy as my situation is, I got very lucky with the with, we're doing this TV show now on a new. I need to do a plug. Completely selfless promotion here is Axon, who does a lot of the training for law enforcement. They have a network coming out called FRN, First
cool,
Responders Network. Yeah, sweet deal. And being Jason Sheckley will have the Badge Boys on that TV show or that series. So we're already filming episodes each week. I got a movie gig. I can't talk about it. The ink isn't dry yet, so I can't talk about it. I'm on
cool,
ID channel, so I got all these great things, but I was able to transform my speaking gig with this radio show, and that will be different from everybody,
in a
and then you
transition period, which was
transition
good.
into your next new. Exactly. And again, it would go back to what feeds your soul, or what is that, makes you happy, and just keep transforming new entities. There's a reason why some of these great actors can be child actors and be great, you know grandpa actors. They were able to transform, and some others don't, and we don't see them anymore. You got to transform and adapt to the new you and your new surroundings.
I love it. I love it, Darren. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
You go to twistedbuttrue.com. That is where you can find all 3 books. I've been really remiss lately in terms of I've been so busy with Badge Boys and this Hollywood thing, so I haven't really updated it. But you can get a hold of me there, twistedbuttrue.com. You can get a hold of me at Cop Talk, COP hyphen talk, TALK at outlook.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not much on Twitter and Instagram, only because I'm too stupid to.
You mean there's not you doing funny dances on TikTok?
It's not, yeah, or TikTok. Yeah, I'm just not that guy. And I'm a twit, so I don't know why I'm not good at Twitter. But I'm all about LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. Please join me, and love to talk to you and maybe get you on the show. Who's ever out there listening that has a story like Chris.
Yeah, no, we're gonna have to get me on there.
Brother.
No, Darren, thanks so much. Any last words you want to add in?
It sounds cliche, but every time something bad happens, we always say stay safe. And I just want to seriously say stay safe. We're living in some hard times. Stay safe both in body and in spirit and in mind, because it all affects you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Awesome, Darren. Well, thanks for that. Now, guys, for those that are listening and watching, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. Darren's just told us his complete story, which is, we don't get the privilege and the honor of people actually going into the depth and detail that he did. And there's a lot of hard times in there, but as you can see and as you could hear, he's always, as he says, transitioning, just taking next moment. Now, a lot of it probably sounded like it was a lot easier than it probably actually was, but because I know from my place in career alone, there is, but it's always having that outlook, always having that positive outlook. And if you're in the depths of that negativity or that you're feeling like, what's next? How can I get through this? Just have a listen to Darren's story, because he's made it through it. He's lost his son. He lost his career. He's got changed from his career multiple times. He's got all these things, and look at him now. He's still just transitioning through it and just taking one day at a time. So take that one thing, like I said in the beginning, take that one thing and just start running with it. But thank you, Darren, for being here. Thank you for telling us your story and being open and vulnerable. And we could see it, and I appreciate all of it. Until next time, guys, remember, keep training that body and that mind hard. So when you get tested, whether it be physically, emotionally, mentally, things are that little bit easier. Till next time, we'll talk to you guys soon.